Welcome to Kids Recall. In today's video, we'll be going through the 2022 movie Lyle, Crocodile. It's time to recall. Let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The movie starts and we see an aspiring performer called Hector, who's on the stage as a magician trying to get a nice job. He goes on to show them a few tricks and then shows them a pigeon trick, which of course is too outdated. And they go on to tell him to get out of there because they want to see something new, as no one cares about these outdated tricks anymore. Hector is really upset and decides he has to do something different in order to make a name for himself as a magician. He decides that he's going to get a pet to make his performance more interesting by working with the pet. And he makes his way to a pet shop. When he looks around in the pet shop, he can't make a decision as to what should he pick as a pet. He then hears someone singing and makes his way into the back part of the shop, where he's shocked to see a little baby crocodile singing a song. Hector keeps looking at the crocodile and he is fascinated by it. He finds it really cute and of course talented too. He sits and plays with the baby crocodile, prompting him to decide that this is going to be his pet, and right away he names him Lyle. The scene changes and we see that Lyle is now at his place in Manhattan. He tries his best to make the little baby crocodile sing, but it doesn't work, as Lyle is really shy. Hector then goes on to write a song, Take a Look at Us Now. He and Lyle finally start getting along and they practice the song together. When Hector thinks that they are prepared enough, he decides to take it to the stage. They go to a show where they perform. However, when their turn comes, the little baby crocodile goes on to get cold feet because of stage fright, and Lyle is unable to sing. The show totally flops, and the people from the audience go on to make fun of them. Hector is now broken. He's literally on the road, as we learn that Hector gave his house as security in order to get a place to perform on stage. He decides as he's going to have to leave now because the house is not under his name anymore. He puts Lyle into the big attic of the house and tells him to wait for him while he goes out in hopes of making some money. Lyle's heartbroken because he's now left alone and he seems depressed. The scene changes and we see that it's been 18 months since Hector went out in hopes of making some money. We see a new couple moving into Hector's house. They call themselves Mr. and Ms. Primm. They also have a son named Josh. Mr. Primm is a school teacher while Ms. Primm writes cooking books. The scene changes and we see the news moved in the family sees their very rude neighbor called Mr. Grumps, who also has a cat, and just like him, his cat is also very grumpy. The cat looks grumpy, but in truth, it's a really sweet cat. Josh really likes the cat and asks Mr. Grump its name. He introduces the cat as Loretta. Josh is also told to be a very shy kid. We go on to learn that these people have moved into the city from a village, so Josh is finding it hard to settle into the new environment and he misses his village too. Josh is also a little awkward when he gets to meet new people. He, however, seems to be getting along with Loretta as she goes on to give the cat some milk, and then Loretta goes on to get into the attic. Josh follows her around, and this is where Lyle was left by Hector, who has been sitting in a glass box. Josh then goes on to find a letter in which he goes on to read that Hector considered Lyle his most precious possession. The next day, Josh is taken to his new school. Mr. Primm drops him off, and he does not seem to be a fan of this new school either. He feels like a stranger because he is, of course, a stranger. And on top of that, the other people are not very nice to him. On his very first day, he ends up getting bullied by a group of popular students. They yell at him because he came in front of the camera when they were shooting a video. Lyle then goes home and plays with Loretta. The cat is the only thing he seems to like about moving to the city. That night when he's playing with Loretta upstairs, both of them hear a noise coming from the attic. They choose to ignore it at first, but when the noise doesn't stop, both of them make their way to the attic and see where the noise is coming from. When they get there, they see the giant Lyle standing on his 2 feet and singing a song. Loretta and Josh both get scared for a moment, and Loretta then goes on to attack Lyle. Lyle, however, ends up swallowing her, and Josh is pissed off. He goes on to kick the crocodile out of the house. When Josh is out there trying to tell Lyle to go away, he's attacked by a man who's a mugger. He tells Josh to give up his phone to him, but Lyle attacks the mugger and goes on to save Josh from him. Josh is still angry at Lyle for swallowing Loretta, but then he goes on to spit her back out. Josh has now realized that Lyle is a good-natured crocodile because he's not even attacked him yet. He thinks that it's unfair to kick him out of the house and tells him to go back into the house with him. The scene then changes to the adult couple who has not been having the best time. Mr. Primm's big crowded class has been giving him a hard time as he finds it hard to control the students. On top of that, Mrs. Primm is also in a bad mood because she has not been able to put her heart into her work. She says that she at times doesn't even feel like doing it. And on top of that, she's been unable to give Josh any time. One day, a bag full of chocolates that Mrs. Primm has told her husband not to eat just appears in their kitchen. And Mrs. Primm is pissed at her husband for bringing the chocolates. But he has no idea where they came from. It turns out Lyle is the one behind this, and he's apparently trying to impress the adult couple in the house. The scene then changes to Josh, who's in the library at his school. There we also see a girl named Trudy, who's really impressed when she sees Josh reading up on crocodiles. And this is what turns out to be the conversation starter between them. Josh then goes on to further impress Trudy when he tells her he has a pet crocodile. Later on, Josh goes out with Lyle for dumpster diving because Lyle loves eating the leftover food of other people. When they are there, they get to bond a lot, and Josh goes on to tell Lyle that Mrs. Primm is actually his stepmom, adding that his real mother died when he was just 2. Josh is sad to recall the fact that his mother is no more, and Lyle tries to cheer him up by singing him a song. When Josh sees him singing, he's fascinated by how good he sings, and at the same time, he's shocked by the fact that a crocodile can sing, and that he's really good. Later on, Josh's mother is shocked when she sees Josh sleeping with the crocodile on the couch. She gets scared and starts screaming. Josh right away goes on to follow her outside because she runs away. Josh tries to make her understand everything, and in the meantime, Lyle also gets there and goes on to sing a song, "How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You." Mrs. Primm, who was shocked and scared to death a few minutes ago when she saw Josh sleeping with a crocodile, is now softened by the melodic voice of Lyle. Lyle now starts to get along with the family. He goes on to inspire Mrs. Primm to try out new recipes to help her get back to work, as she lately has not been feeling up to it. He also goes on to sing a song related to cooking, "Ripe Up the Recipe." Mrs. Primm now really starts liking Lyle. She enjoys his company and goes on to promise him that she's never going to reveal his secret to anyone. Mr. Primm, on the other hand, has been noticing that his wife has been really happy. One night, when they're about to sleep, she comes in jumping around. She really is happy, and this time Mr. Primm goes on to ask her what has gotten into her and gotten her in such a mood. She, however, doesn't tell him anything, and he doesn't like it. Mr. Primm now starts thinking that his wife might be having an affair. This is when Mrs. Primm decides that she's going to tell him the actual reason behind her happiness. Later that day, when Josh and Lyle are hanging out in Josh's room, Mrs. Primm goes on to take her husband to the room and finally introduces Lyle to him. Mr. Primm, of course, freaks out at the sight of a crocodile in his son's room. He starts screaming and tells his wife and son to get out of the house. Just as he's running towards the main door to get out, Hector enters the house. He right away starts calling for Lyle, and the crocodile is upset with him. He doesn't want to do anything with Hector because Hector abandoned him. Hector, however, goes on to dance and sing, prompting Lyle to cheer up. They then dance and giggle together. Hector's really happy to see Lyle after so long. He then goes on to show a document to Mr. Primm in which it is written that he can live in this house for 15 days every year. Mr. Primm is really pissed off at this, but he has to put up with it because it is a legal document. Later on, we see that Mr. Primm is really disturbed because he has been having a hard time at work as he finds it hard to control his students. Lyle then brings out Mr. Primm's old wrestling suit and recommends he starts wrestling again. Mr. Primm listens to his advice. He starts training, and after a few days, he takes part in a wrestling match and comes out victorious. Winning a wrestling match gives him his confidence back, and he's now able to control his students with ease. Mr. Grumps, on the other hand, is tired of Josh and his family because he's sick of the noise coming from their place, and on top of that, he's mad at Josh because he gave unusual stuff to Loretta to eat, and now she has a loose stomach. He then goes on to call a meeting. All the people from the neighborhood come to attend this meeting, and Mr. Grumps tells the other neighbors to kick Mr. Primm's family out of the neighborhood. This is when Hector shows up and goes on to tell everyone that he and Mr. Grumps grew up together. He then starts talking about other things to change the topic on purpose so that the other people are not able to focus on the negative things said by Grumps. Grumps is really pissed off because no one listens to him, and Hector takes all the attention with his charms. Mr. and Mrs. Primm are really impressed by Hector and thank him for helping them in the meeting. Hector then goes on to take Lyle to another show to perform, hoping that Lyle will be more confident now. It, however, doesn't turn out to be a good idea, as Lyle yet again gets cold feet, and stage fright hits him again, and he's unable to sing. On top of that, people from Animal Control Association get there and they see Lyle. It's revealed that he's been tipped about Lyle by an anonymous person. They are there to take Lyle to the zoo. Hector manages to get out of there while the Primms try to hide Lyle. They try their best to save him, but it doesn't work, and Lyle ends up in a zoo. The whole family then goes to the zoo to see Lyle, but they're unable to do anything for the poor crocodile. Josh is also sad about losing his friend, and he has tears in his eyes. When they leave, Lyle is really sad and goes on to sing the song Carried Away. He thinks about his and Hector's time together. Hector then goes to see Josh, who's pissed off at him. It is revealed that Hector himself is the one who tipped the Animal Control just for some money. Hector himself admits that he's run behind on money his whole life and that he's always left Lyle behind. Hector says that he's realized his mistake now. He tells Josh that he's decided he's going to free Lyle from the zoo. The scene changes and we both see Josh and Hector in the zoo. Hector is dressed as a magician and he goes on to create a diversion by pulling off magic tricks and pulling a crowd doing that. They then move toward Lyle, who is not happy to see Hector. Josh tells Hector to ask for Lyle's forgiveness, and Hector tells him that he's really ashamed of what he's done. He's really ashamed to admit that he never cared about Lyle's feelings, and that all he wanted was to make money using him. The other crocodiles have been mean to Lyle, and Hector goes on to help Lyle deal with them as they cause obstacles for them. Finally, Josh and Hector are able to free Lyle from the zoo. The people from the zoo get there in the meantime, and when they are about to be caught, Hector again creates a diversion by exploding a smoke bomb. 3 of them manage to get out of there safely. Lyle is still wanted because Mr. Grumps wants him to be taken away. Josh then decides to take him to a talent show so that he can show his talent and will be taken off the wanted list. On stage, Lyle manages to overcome his stage fright with help from Josh. Receiving acclaim from the audience and viewers for his singing talent, 1 month later a trial is held to determine whether or not Lyle may be free. The judge ultimately decides to rule over Grumps in favor of Lyle when Hector reveals that the deed to his house was written out to his grandmother. And it was hidden away under Grumps' bed, who built the house and founded New York City Zoo, where Lyle was previously kept, allowing her to keep exotic animals as pets. After the trial, the Primms celebrate Lyle's freedom and Grumps' implied eviction by taking him on vacation, while Hector becomes acquainted with a new talented animal named Malfoy, owned by Josh's friend Trudy. And with that, the movie comes to an end. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. And thank you for watching.